At first glance, it may seem that I am in the Chornobyl exclusion zone, among abandoned yards, overgrown houses. This is both true and untrue. Many know about the 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the Chornobyl nuclear plant itself, but few know about the other one, the so-called third zone. 40 years after the 1986 catastrophe, it still exists. It includes hundreds of settlements that were also affected by radiation, and their residents also suffered from the consequences of the nuclear disaster. At some point, there were plans to resettle people from there, but those plans were reconsidered. Economic life was gradually wound down, and the residents were left to face the consequences alone. This vast territory includes areas near the 30-kilometer exclusion zone in the Kyiv, Zhytomyr, Rivne, and Chernihiv regions. Scientists study the level of radioactive contamination there and monitor the condition of local residents. Dr. Valentina Vasilenko is one of them.
Over the years, a database of approximately 1.5 million measurements has been accumulated. I have visited all 12 regions of Ukraine in radioactive territories. Currently, we have 841 settlements in the third zone. The population in these settlements decreases from one visit to the next. Life continues there, but the population is declining.
We are heading to the other bank of the Dnipro River directly opposite the exclusion zone. The roads leading here have not seen repairs for a long time, and the war has only worsened their condition. To get here, you have to drive through emptiness. Here, in the Chernihiv region, there are villages where not only those who had relatives in Pripyat and Chornobyl live, but also a large number of resettled people from affected territories, workers of the Chornobyl nuclear power plant, and liquidators of the incident. Here lies the village of Nedenchichi, located right on the border with Belarus. From here to the Belarusian border is just 1 kilometer, where the official exclusion zone lies. The places here are incredibly beautiful. Life here was once like a fairy tale. Former District Council Deputy Tetiana Hrubovska said,
We had a very large village. We had a railway junction. At that time, in 1986, we had good connections with Chernihiv and Pripyat. A train to Moscow ran without transfers. There were many people in the village, and the Kotsubinsky State Farm operated. People kept livestock and cultivated a lot of land. In the first days after the accident, we noticed nothing and knew nothing. It happened from Friday to Saturday or from Thursday to Friday. On Saturday, people from Pripyat started arriving en masse. There were many young people, young families. My brother arrived and said, "Have you heard about the accident?" "Yes," we said. We heard. He quickly left Pripyat, taking nothing with him except a large, beautiful retro radio receiver.
Radio. Таке з ручкою.
The village, she said, was supposed to be resettled, and at first, residents did leave, but soon they returned, despite the potential danger.
Нам повідомили десь.
We were informed somewhere in June, July, that our village was to be resettled. All documents were prepared and instructions were given to the woman who worked in the village council. It is true, they told her to lower the radiation indicators.
І дали їй указівку зменшувати показники радіоактивного забруднення.
Over time, it became clear that the radiation contamination was indeed not as high as expected. To this day, the village remains in the third zone, a zone of voluntary resettlement. No one wanted to leave their native land, but everyone still feels the consequences through oncological and cardiovascular diseases.
Десь біля 1000 проживає.
About 1,000 people live here, but only 70 remain who remember who were adults or at least children in 1986. Others have passed away. We have many young people, many young families. But recently, many of those who remember 1986 are dying.
Дуже вимирають.
Almost all local residents complain about their health. The neighboring village of Myov, located right on the bank of the Dnipro River, once had 2,000 residents. Now it is 3 times fewer. Former school principal Olha Heda says the demographic catastrophe has become a sentence for these settlements.
Третя зона.
Ніхто нічого не забороняв.
The third zone, nothing was prohibited. Parents who were already elderly tried to take their children away because many children were registered at the Kyiv Radiological Center.
Тому що дуже багато дітей зразу поставили на облік у Києві, і Київський радіологічний центр спостерігав за ними.
There are people here whose thyroid glands were removed because they did not function. Many people are on hormones, and how many have died?
Тому що вона не працює. Дуже багато на гормонах людей. А скільки повмирало?
Now, together with summer residents and newcomers, we have about 700 people, but back then we had 2,000.
Це десь 700 із хуторами. А тоді було і 2,000, і більше. Коли в 82-му...
When the school was built in 1982 and I became its principal, we had more than 600 students. Now there are 23 or 24.
У усього населення проблеми з ногами.
People have problems with their legs. We think this is due to radionuclides. Cesium and strontium settled in the bones, and their legs hurt. And people's gait has changed. They walk with sticks, hunched over. You cannot recognize the village as it once was.
Згорблені, не можна пізнати село таке, як воно було, звичайно.
And even the schools that are still operating are struggling to survive. The largest school in the area, in the neighboring village of Pakol, currently has several dozen students, while there used to be several hundred.
55 зараз. Покольсько-Страсинського округу.
Total number of children now is 55. In our Pakul administrative district, we transport children from hamlets like Linnea and Rudnia. I've been here since 1996, and back then there were more than 170 children, and every year the birth rate declines.
Зараз є тенденція таке, що, можливо, Дніпровську школу до нас приєднають.
The school from the village of Dniprovsky might merge with us. There are 30 children there. Maybe we will last a couple of years.
Тому ще пару років протримаємося. Спад дуже великий, да.
The decline is very significant. Mortality is high, and the birth rate is extremely low. Mortality: many people die from cancer. Young people mostly leave. Those who remain have few jobs.
Робочих місць мало.
And this is the second problem. Because these settlements ended up in the third zone, residents were supposed to relocate voluntarily. But economic activity there was gradually curtailed. The territory is close to the exclusion zone where there is radiation, so over time old enterprises were closed and new ones were not created.
У 89-му році
In 1989, our state farm was transferred as a subsidiary of the Chornobyl nuclear power plant, and everyone hoped that the city of Slavutych would be supplied with our products because the city stands on our land.
цьому місту. Оскільки місто на нашій землі збудовано, то нас не залишать оці населені пункти, 8 населених пунктів, без уваги не залишать.
But very little time had passed, and the plant's management said the products were not needed.
Господарство підсобне почало розпадатися, а через те, що керівництво ЧАЕС ставило питання, нам не треба ця продукція.
At the same time, eggs and milk were being brought from Crimea.
Яйця, возили молоко, зараз сама...
Now, there is real poverty. I believe we have no support from the state.
З боку держави в нас нема ніякої підтримки. Я ж не зря вам сказала, що у нас 1,5 кілометра.
1.5 kilometers away is Belarus. We cannot organize anything here because there is a border nearby, and beyond that, forests stretch toward Chernihiv.
А все, що йде далі, ближче до Чернігова, йдуть ліси.
The economic and demographic catastrophe caused a ripple effect that also impacted villages in more distant areas that were not even in the third zone and did not register radioactive contamination. For example, the village of Velikaviz, located far from the exclusion zone and Chornobyl, is also emptying out. Yulia Yarosh is one of its last residents.
Дуже велике було село, багато людей було.
It used to be a very large village. If earlier there were 1,000 people, now about 100 remain.
Біля сотні залишилось людей всього в селі. Та люди вже давно виїхали.
People have long been leaving. There is no shop, no post office, no medical point, and buses do not run. People leave. They do not want to stay.
Ну от тому люди виїжджають, тому вони і не хочуть.
For this village, the Chornobyl plant, located nearly 100 kilometers away, became a real sentence, not directly, but rather indirectly.
Тоді дуже велике було переселення людей.
At that time, there was massive resettlement. Even relatives often did not accept those from the zone because they were afraid of being infected.
Тому що боялись, що можна заразитись. Ну, із села не виїжджали, але ж
People did not leave directly from the village much, but they moved to cities.
виїжджали у місто від сусіда. Він був
One neighbor died because of another.
там, біля
He had been fishing near the Chornobyl NPP and received a large dose of radiation. He did not know it, you cannot see it immediately, and he irradiated another neighbor who also died.
І заразив сусіда. Сусід помер теж. І він помер. Той чоловік помер.
Now only pensioners remain in the village. Yulia often visits one such neighbor, Tetiana. She remembers April 26, 1986, the day of the accident, almost hour by hour, even though 40 years have passed.
Ну, в 86-м год я бураки, специалистам бураки давали.
When Chernobyl exploded, everyone was working in the field, and there was terrible dust. It was during the day. We were weeding beets.
То всі були на полі, це було днем. Саме кололи бурак.
However, the third zone is not only about problems, it is also about stories of survival, courage, and resilience. Volodymyr Yakubets, a resident of the village of Pakul, despite the crisis around him, maintains his home, family, and farm.
Я в 57-му році як народився, і по цей день я живу в селі Пакул.
I was born in 1957 and have lived in Pakul ever since. I finished school, a cultural education college, worked here,
От, в культурі. Ну, а потім, коли у 86-му році сталася трагедія,
and when the tragedy happened in 1986 and the city of Slavutych began to be built, my wife and I went to work there.
працювати в Славутичі, да? Працював на армянському об'єкті.
We worked with Armenians, building the Yerevan quarter. Wonderful people, lots of barbecues. It was great.
Їли, будували місто. Да, Єреванський квартал будували. Закінчилося будівництво.
When construction ended, a mill was built in Pakul, where I worked for a long time, and I stayed here in retirement.
До пенсії працював. Залишився тут.
It was a quiet life. In spring,
Звичайне життя.
no one felt anything.
Весна.
We did not hear about the accident right away.
Ніхто нічого
Maybe
не
on the third day,
відчував.
like everyone else,
За
but it was
аварією
presented as
зразу
just an
почув.
accident,
На третій
as
день
if nothing serious.
Але ж було просто сказано так, наче це нічого, просто так, що-то там вибухнуло.
На Чернобыльской атомной электростанции произошла авария. Поврежден один из атомных реакторов. Принимаются меры по ликвидации последствий аварии. Пострадавшим оказывается помощь. Создана правительственная комиссия.
Then people began to feel it in their health. People started getting sick a lot.
Люди на здоров'я відчулося. Ну, почали хворіти.
Despite his fears and difficulties, he did not leave his native village, and the nearby forests inspired his hobby, woodworking. He helps fellow villagers and supports those who have lost hope.
Коли Славутич почався будуватися,
When Slavutych started being built, and afterward, I continued working there, and now I work for myself. I made my own machines, helped some people a bit, made all the doors and windows for myself as well.
собі всі двері, собі робив вікна, все.
In addition, the nearby city of Slavutych has become a source of support for many locals. It is the youngest city in Ukraine. Many people from Pripyat were relocated here, and nearly 2,000 of its residents still work at the Chornobyl nuclear plant. Serhiy Krasikov is one of them. He has worked at the plant for almost 40 years.
В Славутичі я
I have been in Slavutych since 1989, when I transferred from a contracting organization to the management of the Chornobyl NPP.
в дирекцію Чорнобильської АЕС. Згодом отримав квартиру, згодом в 90-му році одружився.
I received an apartment, got married, and in 1992, my son was born here, and in 2000, my daughter was born. My son has been defending Ukraine since 2022, now in his 5th year.
Перевівся в турбінний цех Чорнобильська АЕС в 89-му році.
I transferred to the plant's turbine workshop in 1989 as a pump operator. I worked at the third power unit until 2003. When Unit 3 was shut down in 2000,
Зупинили третій енергоблок у 2000 році. Для мене було
I was used to the hum of the power unit, the turbines. It was exhilarating.
на своє робоче місце гудуть турбіни, захватувало дух.
I went to work with pleasure, but in 2000, when there was this, dead silence, it pressed on me.
Вибачте, гробова тиша, і це емоціонально давило на мене.
So in 2003, I moved to the Department of Construction of the new safe confinement, where I still work.
Де працюю до сих пір.
The city was built in a short time in the late 1980s, with each district designed based on individual projects. The city's residents are generally young and have a decent income. And even during the war, construction continues, as do street improvements toward inclusivity, projects of the city council in partnership with the UN.
Коли будується атомна електростанція,
When a nuclear power plant is built, there must be a satellite city nearby where the plant's workers live.
працівники. І збудували місто Славутич.
That is how Slavutych was built. It is the youngest city. All Soviet republics built it, each its own district. Polisa, Tallinn, Tbilisi, Baku, Chernihiv.
Якщо ми подивимося, там він колись називався по-другому, зараз Поліський квартал, є Таллінський квартал, є Тбіліський квартал, є Бакінський квартал, є Київський квартал, є Чернігівський квартал.
Everyone who comes to visit colleagues or friends is proud of the beauty of the buildings and streets.
Красою будівель, красою вулиць. В місті
There is no public minibus service in Slavutych, but taxis are available. The city can be crossed in 15 minutes. It is very compact. It used to have 25,000 residents, and due to the full-scale invasion, about 60% remain.
Проживало 25 тисяч. В зв'язку з повномасштабним вторгненням, я думаю, що зараз може 60% проживає.
What is the future of the zone? Scientists constantly measure radionuclides in soil, leaves, water, and human bodies. In Kyiv, an entire dedicated research center is devoted to this. Gradually, the level of radiation in this area is decreasing. According to Valentina Vasilenko, this opens the possibility for reducing the zone and gradually reviving economic activity in these territories.
Не так багато населених пунктів може залишитися.
Not many settlements may remain in the third zone. According to the results of the 2011-12 certification, only about 100 settlements could remain in this third zone. The others already have a better situation.
Що вони не підлягають віднесенню до третьої зони. На сьогодні
Today, the zone is being reassessed again.
And locals themselves said there are many opportunities for developing their settlements. Clean air, silence, remoteness from civilization, ecotourism, craft agriculture. The potential is definitely there.
купуються хатини, ті, які
People buy houses that stand without owners, and pensioners live here. Many come from Chernihiv. There are apiaries and grapes are grown. There is much that newcomers bring to us.
вирощуються, такі, що ми не знали навіть місцеві, що такі можна вирощувати. От. І багато чого такого є, що вони приносять нам.
It would be possible to renovate houses, settle large families there. Even 10 such families would already be good.
Ну, хоч би 10 таких сімей, і вже було б все. Якщо б дітей 5, там 6,
With 5 to 6 children each, even 10 children, and a medical point, a school, and a shop would open. If there was the will, everything could be done.
і школу, і магазин. Тобто, якби хотіли, то все можна зробити.